What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here, PackersNews.com, live on Facebook late in the day on Monday afternoon. The annual league meetings are taking place as we speak down in Orlando, Florida. I am in New York City. If you check PackersNews.com, you'll find a conversation with myself and Michael Cohen, who is there for PackersNews.com throughout the proceedings. He's spoken with Mark Murphy. He'll be attending breakfast with Mike McCarthy tomorrow morning. In the interim, I thought I'd jump on here, talk to you fine folks, see what's on your mind as the Packers continue their journey through the offseason. Of note, this morning, Jordy Nelson took to the airwaves with Wilde and Chauch in Milwaukee on Milwaukee radio, speaking about his time with Green Bay and his departure from the Packers. Make sure you check PackersNews.com for the latest on that. Hello to everyone checking in. Tony, hello. Jack, thanks for jumping on. Justin, hello. So just my initial reaction to Nelson's comments. Understandable why he would frame things as he did, saying that he was hurt at the Packers' unwillingness to work on keeping him around, so to speak. You'll check pinned up here in the comments. You'll see the story that Michael and I wrote off of Jordy Nelson's radio appearance. I think it's understandable why Nelson would be frustrated and hurt. However, at the end of the day, I thought Mark Murphy actually had some pointed comments last evening about not only Nelson, but Morgan Burnett's departure from Green Bay, pointing to, wanting them to feel comfortable returning to Green Bay someday. They'll be considered Packers throughout the rest of their careers and into retirement. There's no doubt that there's no bad blood there. They just made a business decision on the Packers' end, and it's understandable that Nelson feels hurt about it. Obviously, he'll continue his career out in Oakland for a year or two. But long-term, Brian Gutekunst thought this was the best move for Green Bay. He moved on accordingly. One thing I did find interesting in Nelson's appearance was his characterization of the meeting between himself and Brian, and saying that it was a two-part kind of push as far as it wasn't just the cap number, which the Packers seemed inflexible about when it came to their offer, but it was also, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here because I can't remember exactly what he said, but he did indicate that there was also a discussion about his role going forward if he were to stick around, meaning his role in the offense. It's pretty clear that they had plans to not play him as much, probably. I mean, it's kind of similar to what we saw with Donald Driver his last year when he was begging to be put on special teams and did play special teams a couple times because he had been basically taken out of the rotation. I'm pretty sure that they had said, we'll bring you back for X amount, just above the veterans minimum, and you're not going to play a whole lot. And I have little doubt that didn't sit well with Jordy Nelson, and I can't say I blame him. Dre says, this should be Geronimo Allison's breakout season. What do you think? I thought we would see a little bit more out of him last year that would have maybe precipitated the idea that, yes, he could take a big step in his third year. However, old school, especially in this offense, history will tell you that guys do make their biggest jump in year 3 at the wide receiver spot. So I think there's definitely a possibility. I don't think they're going to rest on that. I don't think they're going to count on that. I do think they'll draft a wide receiver, maybe 2. I don't think they're done looking in free agency yet. Jordan Matthews is still a possibility. So that could limit Geronimo Allison's opportunity, obviously. But I don't think you could rule it out. I think there's definitely a chance that Allison could see a huge uptick in numbers and output. Tyler with the question du jour of the day, at least on social media. Any chance the Packers go after OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr.? The storyline coming out of the league meetings last night, John Mara, one of the co-owners of the Giants, did indicate that no one was untouchable when it came to trade talks. And then the next day, this morning, NFL Network reporting that Odell Beckham Jr. will not report to training camp without a new contract. So that has sparked trade speculation. Indeed, another report later in the day indicated that the Los Angeles Rams are trying to make a play for Odell Beckham Jr. I would be absolutely shocked if the Packers got in on that. I think the price will be steep, and they're gearing up to pay Aaron Rodgers a boatload of money. The whole reason this is going on in New York is because Odell Beckham Jr. wants to become one of, if not the highest paid player in the NFL. I don't see the Packers taking that on. Clearly they could, as far as bring him in for a year and then hope to rework a deal at the end of next season. But if he balled out with Aaron Rodgers, much like one would assume he would, his asking price could be astronomical. And I just don't see the Packers going that way, especially after giving Aaron Rodgers will be a monster deal. Any update on Jordan Matthews? No, nothing yet. Still sitting out there. Let's see what else we got. Lance rules. Talking about Lance Kendricks. Do we trade for Darby or hold on for DRC? I doubt they make a trade, although they have more picks than anybody else in this draft, so you can't rule out the possibility of maybe possibly the Packers unloading a pick prior to the draft, but I would be surprised. I think DRC is a more realistic possibility, though I don't think... I mean, I'm not going to say it's not realistic. I think it could happen, but we'll see. If they have their meeting with Delvin Breaux coming up, there's no set date on it yet, but I know that it's on their radar, on their plans. And or Devon House is still sitting out there. I think both of those will be cheaper options. I think DRC is going to get at least a decent deal. I don't see the Packers spending too much money. Why Matthews? He is only a slot receiver and we have Cobb. He has done his best work in the slot. There's no doubt about that. The Bills did use him both outside and in the slot. I think more than anything, it would just be for, just another option for the offense. And, you got to look back at 2011 when they were 15-1. They used a lot of 2x2 sets, 2 on the outside, 2 on the inside. They were really effective with that. So you could have Matthews on the slot on one side and Cobb on the slot on the other. They could do some real damage with that. What about the cornerback from the Saints? That's who I was just talking about, Delvin Breaux. I know they have spoken to his representatives. They want to set up a meeting. I haven't been able to confirm a date for that to happen yet, but they have spoken, and the idea is to bring him in. I don't know if he's coming in prior to his reported visit with San Francisco or not, but he is on their radar, so to speak. Thoughts on Breaux? Well, John, it's tough to get much of an evaluation because he's missed so much time due to injury. In 2015, which was his last full healthy season, he was pretty darn good, and I think he would absolutely help them on the perimeter in Mike Pettine's defense. It's really hard to say though after he's been away for essentially 2 years. Not quite sure what you're getting there, either on the field or health-wise. Will Kaiser beat Hundley? I think so. We'll see. I mean, we got a long off season to go. It'll be interesting to see how quickly he picks up the offense, what the opportunities he gets are comparative to Hundley. But I would say if all things are even, probably. Will Hundley be traded or released this year? I don't think he'll be traded, although I do know there have been little bites from teams interested as far as not so much as a concrete offer, but they've heard from a team or two informally. I know that about Hundley. Isn't he the player that had the Saints change doctors? Yes, he is. I can't remember exactly which injury it was, but one of them was misdiagnosed, and they fired the doctor after that episode. Eric Reed? Lewis, I doubt they go there. They drafted Josh Jones for a reason. One reason specifically being because they knew there was a good possibility they'd lose Morgan Burnett. I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm not saying it won't happen, but I would be surprised if they spent allocated cap money to safety. If Ridley is there at 14, would you pick him? Would I? No. If only because this group, whether it be the guys that left who are now in Cleveland and Elliott and Zoe, or the guys who are still on staff, they've all shown a really good ability to spot talent in the second and third rounds. The Packers in the last decade have unearthed some really good wide receivers outside of the first round. I tend to doubt they would need to draft one at 14, especially with so many needs on the defensive side of the ball. Now, I'm not going to say it's not going to happen. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but I'd be surprised. I saw someone ask, is Clay Matthews going to be traded? I would tend to doubt it, just because of the cap hit. I think whatever team traded for him would have to take on his $11 million onto their cap. So I doubt that happens. I still think there's a possibility they extend him to reduce that cap hit, but I don't think Clay's going anywhere. What are we doing at right tackle? Thomas, that is an excellent question. I have little doubt Mike McCarthy will be asked that, as will Brian Gutekunst tomorrow morning during the NFC coaches breakfast. Right now, sure sounds like they're banking on Brian Bulaga possibly coming back maybe week 1. I doubt that, though. Maybe week 6, 7 after the physically unable to perform list is up. I got to think they got to draft somebody to man that, because I don't see a solution there on the roster as we speak. But it is only March, so they have some time. But that's a big question mark heading into the 2018 season. There's no doubt about that. Davenport looking like the pick. Thoughts? I disagree there. I'll be very surprised if Davenport's the pick at 14. I think he's a bit of a product of some media hype, a machine that got started up kind of out of nowhere after the collegiate football season ended, which speaks to his either agent / representatives and or a PR firm doing some really good work for him. I don't see that kind of player when I look at his college tape. I could be totally wrong, but I'll be very surprised if he's the pick at 14, if he's on the board. Maybe someone takes him before that. I doubt it, but you never know. Would you take Quinn Nelson if the Packers moved up in the draft? Whew. Man, it'd be hard to justify spending draft capital to move up however many spots. Even though Quinn Nelson, I think, is a fantastic, if not the best player in this draft, man, it'd be hard to justify moving up to go get a guard when you have so many other needs and you have you've had such issues on defense for so long. That would be awfully rich for my blood. But heck, if if Gutekunst thinks he's a once-in-a-lifetime prospect at the position and says, I've got to have him, maybe he does it. I'd be very surprised, though. Paul, yes, I shaved. You're right. Would you pick Arden Key at 45? Whew, that's a good question. I think that's about his value, around there. I definitely wouldn't take him in the first round. But I think he'd be in play there if he lasts that long. Will Daniel's comments persuade them to take Jackson at 14, the cornerback out of Iowa? I doubt it. I mean, guys are going to stump for their alma maters. They're going to stump for kids they know, etc. That doesn't really move the needle at all inside the personnel office. It's good fodder. It's good, entertainment, but it doesn't mean much. I think Derwin James is the guy at 14. Just your gut. Well, your gut is going to have to trade up, I think. So I'll be very surprised if James is available at 14. But if by some minor miracle he is there and he falls to 14, I think there's a good chance he's the pick. What happened to your mock draft? Terrence, it'll be out in a couple weeks. I only do one, and I'm not doing it this far out yet. Jari Evans sticking around. That's a good question. No word yet on talks on either side. I know he had been mulling retirement. There's been nothing official on that end. I think the Packers will wait until after the draft, but maybe they re-sign him right before the draft, much like they did last year, just to kind of give themselves options in the draft so they don't feel boxed in having to take a guard. Although I've said here before, I think Justin McCray is their solution to plug in at right guard next year. We'll see how that plays out. But I wouldn't close the book on it yet. But I'll be surprised if they don't try to move on and get younger there. I think Harold Landry is wildly undersized. I guess to do what? I mean, all players have value. His is apparent, especially when it comes to getting after the quarterback. He's going to stand in there and be able to hold up against the run. I think that is a legitimate question. But I think at the end of the day, if you need someone to pin their ears back and go get the QB and win a one-on-one, he can do it. And he's your guy. And that's a premium asset to have in the NFL. Are there concerns about his game? No doubt. Not just his size either. But, the fall off in play last year was very real. It's there on tape for everyone to see. Obviously, a lot of people point to the 2016 season when he's fully healthy. That tape you can't deny. It's pretty fantastic. But I hear you on the size thing. It's a legitimate concern. Did Ted Thompson get a new mop bucket and mop to go with his new position? No, but maybe he got a new tape machine with a bunch of new college tape to watch. Trade back. Greg, I think that's a very real possibility and something that maybe isn't getting enough kind of lip service / press as maybe it should. But I think there's a good chance with all the premium defensive talent that will that has a good chance of being pushed down to the Packers, if they have, similar grades on a bunch of different guys, it makes sense to drop down at least a few spots, maybe grab another pick, and then take a guy who they would have liked at 14 anyway, a couple of spots later. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. But I do think there's a good possibility that happens, especially with all the quarterbacks that are, supposedly going to go there in the top 10, even the top 5. You got to think there's going to be some real talent for the Packers to pick from. And like I said, if they're all pretty similar, there's a chance they trade back. How difficult is Rodgers' contract going to be? It's going to be tricky. There's no doubt about it. I do think Russ Ball is going to earn his money on this one, so to speak. I think Tom Silverstein laid it out really well over the weekend. If you haven't checked out Tom's piece on Rodgers' contract talks, make sure you check that out at PackersNews.com. It does a great job of laying out how it's not only, clearly they're going to make him the highest paid player in the league, in the history of the league. Now, there are a lot of different ways of doing that. The Packers would undoubtedly like to open up some cap space this year. Maybe not too much, but a little bit. And they also want to ensure that he stays relatively high up in the conversation of highest paid player in the league much longer than he has in the past, because they don't want to have to address this again down the road. Now, if that's a question of what's the guarantee, how do they spread the guarantee out, the signing bonuses, how much they able to prorate it, how many years they make it. I know agents are trying more than ever. The new push is to get a player. Obviously, the fully guaranteed contract ceiling was broken with the Kirk Cousins deal. Now, the next thing that agents are going to want to try and push is tying in a player's salary and or money to a percentage of the salary cap. Meaning, no matter where the cap goes, that said player will be a certain percentage of the cap. Obviously, teams are very resistant to that idea, but that's the next kind of area I think agents are going to try and push into, and maybe Rodgers is the first one to kind of crack that nut, so to speak. But that's, like I said, it's very complicated, and that's why Russ Ball gets paid the big bucks. Ultimately, I still think a deal gets done probably just before training camp. Someone asked, do I think the Packers will use all 12 picks? No, I don't. I suspect they'll trade probably up at some point. Maybe down, but we'll see. But I do think they'll use that draft capital to move up and down the board as they see fit. How about Eric Decker? Last I saw, didn't he? I thought he was visiting somebody out west. It was the Raiders, I think. I can't remember. But I don't see him in Green Bay. Draft Jones's buddy from UTEP. Oh, are you talking about the offensive lineman? I'm blanking on his name right now, but that kid's a killer, man. He'd be great. Is it Hernandez? But he's a mauler. The Packers could do worse, definitely, about that. Do you see a big jump in Yancey's play? Chris, I think there's a great possibility that he takes a big jump from year 1 to year 2. I thought he was really coming on at the end of camp. He showcased it a little bit in preseason. He's a big target. It's the kind of wide receiver the Packers have liked traditionally since Ron Wolf came on board in the early 90s. A bigger guy, can work over the middle, has really good knack for yards after the catch. It all depends on him. If he gets his nose in the playbook, hits the weight room in the offseason and comes back in fighting shape, ready to battle for a spot in the rotation, I think he very well could take a big jump. But we'll see. It's very much, the ball is very much in his court in that regard. All right, everybody, I'm going to jump. Thank you so much for all the questions. I'm sorry if I couldn't get to yours. They do come by fast and furious. But make sure you're checking PackersNews.com for all the latest. I got a conversation with myself and Michael Cohen from down in Orlando. All the latest from the league meetings down there, as well as Jordy Nelsons' comments on the radio this morning. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, Tom Silverstein's take on the Rodgers contract negotiations and everything else having to do with the Packers. It's all there, PackersNews.com. Check it out. Thanks a lot, everyone. I'll talk to you tomorrow.